whomever has a copy or mushaf, we can just start from Surah Al-Imran, inshallah. So if you happen to have a mushaf or Quran with you, you can just go ahead and turn to Surah Al-Imran. That's where we'll begin, inshallah. Third, after Baqarah. Okay, so Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alif Lam Mim. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayy al-qayyum. نزل عليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه وأنزل التوراة والإنجيل هدى من قبل هدى للناس وأنزل الفرقان إن الذين كفروا بآيات الله لهم عذاب شديد والله عزيز ذو انتقام إن الله لا يخفى عليه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء هو الذي يصوركم في الأرحام كيف يشاء لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. So this surah is a Madani surah. It was revealed in that era of the prophetic mission. So it is after Surah Al-Anfal. This is said to be revealed shortly afterwards. And it's also in relation to a group of Nasara or Christians of Banu Najran who are Arab Christians who came to see the Prophet ﷺ and in essence debate with him about the nature of Isa alayhi salam, the divinity of Isa alayhi salam. The same thing as today, whether Jesus, peace be upon him, is divine or part of the Godhead. So when they did that, this surah was revealed. That's the context of its revelation. So this surah, actually, a great portion of it deals with and tackles the theology of the Christians, and is actually a very pertinent surah if we want to know how to debate, if you will, or how to discuss these issues with people of the book, especially the Christians, since this is the backdrop of the revelation of the surah. It's all about the theology and the ideology of Christians, okay, and especially about the divinity of Isa alayhi salam. Hence the title. What's the title? Surah Al-Imran. And this is the family from which Maryam radiallahu anha hails, and by virtue of that also we can say Isa alayhi salam. However, it is part of Semitic culture in general, which means, of course, all the children of Ibrahim alayhi salam. That normally a person is known by their father's people, not their mother. Okay, your lineage is established through the father, not the mother. Okay, this is why in some of the books of fiqh in the past, they would suggest that an Arab woman should not marry a non-Arab man. Because why? Their children will no longer be considered Arab. You understand? Not that it can't happen. It's not haram. It is a suggestion. But we can get into that another time. It's called al-kafa'a. There is a concept that is held by the majority of the fuqaha, except for in the Maliki fiqh, that there should be compatibility in a marriage. And of course that is also definitely very relative, or let's say subjective, depends on the time and place. And if you read the books of fiqh as they go on through the different eras of the ummah, they also change the fatwa accordingly. So what I've just mentioned, for instance, in the older books of Hanafi fiqh, you'll find that yes, they'll suggest an Arab woman should not marry a non-Arab man. As we go on, times change, and Ibn Abidin rahimahullah ta'ala was a famous Hanafi faqih who also happens to be Arab. In his time, he observed that this no longer counts because most of the people that we call Arab today are not really Arab. Meaning lineage-wise, they're not pure Arabs, as in the case in the past where literally they could trace all of their forefathers back to one of what's called Butun al-Arab, one of the main two central tribes of Qathan, for instance. Right? They could trace their lineage back, all their forefathers back to those tribes, and so they're Arab, lineage-wise. He said today, most of the people that we call Arab are not that. Right? They're so mixed up, and And even in the 20th century, after colonialism reached its peak, what happened in much of the Arab world is that in the past, Arabs normally would, again, their names would be related to their lineage. Okay, as you know, bin, the son of, the son of, the son of, the son of. Correct? If you look at any book, usually that's what it is, the son of, the son of, it's a lineage. In fact, subhanAllah, in the tafsir of the famous ayah that we often hear or quote, Surah Al-Hujurat, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He created us qaba'ila, into tribes, wa shu'uban, okay, and nations. That the difference, according to the ulama, is tribes, that is for the Arab, because the Arabs are known by their lineage. And shu'uban, yani, that's for non-Arabs, because non-Arabs usually are their nisba or idafa, meaning who they are related to, is usually by a city or a place or a profession. You understand? Usually when you see the names of people who are non-Arab, it's not the same. It's usually not by lineage, that the son of, son of, son of, son of, son of, son of. But rather it's usually a place or even times a profession, so forth and so on. Okay? So, but that changes after time to the extent that even in the 20th century, like I said, like now, like a friend of mine, Moroccan friend of mine, said at that time, you know, they used to have the long names because of the lineage. It was all mentioned, bin, right? Then in the 20th century, when things started, everything is registered, and people would bring their kids to the registrar to get their names put in. They would just skip all that and give them a different type of name. Why do you mention that? Because even now the lineage becomes what? Obscured. Because now the official register, when you go back and find out who you are, there's nothing really there to tell you your lineage. It's just whatever name they chose at that time. So even in terms of that, it changed. So what I'm trying to say basically in essence is that what he mentioned, this fatwa of compatibility will not apply because there is not this issue that their lineage is so protected that if they marry a non-Arab, they no longer become Arab. For all extents and purposes, most of them are not Arab. Except for, of course, there are a few qaba'id still in certain places you can find in Hijaz and parts of the Arab Peninsula where people still do that, they still know their lineage. And in a case like that, if they still have that strongly preserved, then yeah, the fatwa would still apply. If, again, I know I'm going way off course, but the reason the fatwa applies is compatibility is only meant to make the relationship better. And one must remember the compatibility, what it means is that, for instance, just as an example, in Hanafi fiqh, technically a grown woman can get married on her own, as an example. It's one of the few of all the fuqahas, the mathayib, that allow this, that even without a wali, if she's a grown woman, then she's allowed to marry on her own. Now the wali, though, still has the right to what? Still has the right to complain, to file a complaint, if they feel that for whatever reason, this is not a good match. And this could be a reason. So al-kafa'a, what it means, compatibility, is potentially, let's say the wali is the father finds out his daughter married fulan, and he doesn't like it. So he can go to the qadi, but this is the key point. They can't on their own say, I don't want you with this man, leave him. They have to go to the qadi and the judge and file the complaint, so to speak, and put their case forward, and the judge will then decide whether they're being reasonable or not. Well, not anymore. This is all of this is just...
I mean, that's the way to do it. Is that actually practiced?
Is any of this really practiced? This is all kind of, right, you know. I mean, actually, no, I can say it is, in the sense that, for instance, if probably in this community, right, I've had cases, and we probably know of cases where a girl ran off with a certain boy, and the father comes to the Maulana or the Imam and says, I don't like it, can you talk to them? That would be an example. Now, of course, the difference is the Imam has really no authority to do anything about it. So that's why they say talk to them. Talk to them meaning like they do something about this, but we don't have any legal authority. Whereas as opposed, these fatwa would be in an ideal situation, let's say in Islamic society, right? Everyone's on board. So then the Qadi has the legal authority, if they just so decide that, yes, I don't feel that this is a good match, they can say, your father has the right, so we're going to annul the marriage. Or he can say that your father's being unreasonable, they need to learn how to deal with it or whatever. It all depends. They have to look at but the point is that the idea of compatibility, right? That's what it's all about. It's there to give the wali or anyone who has that kind of authority in the family the ability to protest if they feel the need to. Okay, if they really feel that this is not a proper match. One of the things that he considered used to be that, but the fatwa changed because the times change. Okay, you understand? The times change, the fatwa changes. So how would that apply in any society? It depends on that society itself. It depends on, in that society, what does compatibility mean? Okay, you understand? So if you're living in a society where people are still kind of tribal, or these things still kind of matter, or the world is a little bit smaller, meaning the families are bigger and everyone has contact with each other, these things become more important, right? When you're living in a society like North America, they become a little less important. So I would even dare to say that compatibility in this context probably would just mean that they have a similar outlook in life, to be honest with you. That's really what it boils down to. All the other things that people find so important, like Gujarati, looking for Gujarati and all this other kind of stuff. Allahu A'lam.
So one question I have. So what I remember that there are several authentic hadiths that a woman cannot marry without the permission of wali. So
what's their argument?
Why this Imam
Abu Hanifa said that a woman can marry without a wali?
Why his fatwa is against those hadiths that you can marry even without wali permission?
Yeah, remember always with the A'imma, their fatwa might ostensibly seem to contradict a hadith, but that's never the case in actuality. First of all, a lot of these riwayat are actually not sahih. A lot of these riwayat are diyaf. A lot of them are actually weak. And then the strongest dalil that the Hanafi fuqaha have is based on a principle that Imam Abu Hanifa has, which I'll just try and summarize it, is that a khabr wahid, a single narration that contradicts the book of Allah, it should be scrutinized. It definitely shouldn't be used to change anything that is very clear in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because the sunnah came as tibyan, and it's to bayyana, meaning it's there to explain the book of Allah, not contradict it. Correct? So the biggest is that Allah Himself says, "Hatta tankiha zawjan ghayra," meaning she cannot remarry her previous husband until she. The literal verb here in its verbal pattern, it denotes a single woman in the third person. You see what I'm trying to say? And it says it very clear. It's not ambiguous. That hatta tankiha zawjan ghayra, until she marries another husband. So he says, this is the book of Allah. These hadith that you have, riwayat that you have, that's fine, but their strength does not add up to this ayah, which is very clear. It says that she herself has married another man. You see what I'm trying to say? That's basically what it's premised on. Wallahu a'lam.
Who is the source for the definition of the tribes and nations that you were referring to the fatwa earlier? About the, tribes?
Well, those are two different things. One is the tafsir of the ayah. Okay, qaba'id and shu'ub. Like, what does it mean? Most of the exegetes or the mufassirun say that qaba'id refers to the Arab, who are known by their lineage, and shu'ub and nations refer to non-Arabs, who are usually known by the city or state or nation. As I said, sometimes even some people are known by their profession. Like in obviously Urdu speaking, amongst the Urdu speaking population, that's very common, like Atawala and all this kind of. What does that mean? What that last name is based on someone in their past, like sold itr. Basically, right? That's what it is, and that's their last name. So that doesn't have much to do with like you're the father of this.
So this is the seer.
Yeah, that's part of that. Has nothing to do. It's related to the idea of modern Arabs. Why did Ibn Abidin rahimahullah say it doesn't apply to them? Because most modern Arabs also, it's very rare to find them named after a tribe or their lineage. Okay? Now, that point also about the wali, that doesn't mean that the wali doesn't have any authority. It just means that the marriage is valid. That's also something to remember. You see what I'm trying to say? Because these other hadith would indicate that the marriage is not valid. But in his case, the marriage is valid, but the wali still has authority. The wali's authority is never taken away. But again, that authority is always kept in check by the qadi. And so, kafa'a or compatibility is considered by all three madhab except the Malikiyah. That's why I don't want to be stereotypical and make jokes, but I mean it's kind of well known in different Muslim cultures. There's different things that we know about them. And Morocco is a country where pretty much so anyone can go get married, meaning they're one of the few Arab countries where they won't ask if you're an Arab. Like a non-Arab, a Desi, a white guy, whoever, right? They can go and marry a Moroccan girl very easily. It's not that big of a deal, honestly, right? But why? Because the Malikiyah, in their madhab, Imam Malik's opinion, rahimahullah ta'ala, is that the only thing that is considered is deen. That was his opinion, okay? Like these other things, lineage and profession, are not really important. What is important is the deen. So he doesn't give the authority to the wali except in that perspective. Now, the retort of other ai*imma would be, again, that's all fine and good if marriage was only for the akhirah. But there's worldly purposes to marriage as well. Meaning there is something you're trying to get out of it in the dunya. Okay, so it's good if you just marry someone for their deen. If all you want out of it is the akhirah, that's well and good. But the argument against that would be that there's more to marriage than just the akhirah. There's some dunya things you want out of it also. So if that's not, if that doesn't add up, then there's no compatibility. Does it make sense? And again, these are differences of opinion. No one is completely right or wrong. Is there a right answer in front of Allah? That's right, there is. But the beauty of it is that we're not required to understand or know what is the right answer. Neither will Allah hold us accountable for not knowing the answer in these respects when there's ijtihad, okay? Because you understand what I'm saying? So, khair, why did I get into all of that anyhow? It had something to do with this, Ali Imran, right? Because Isa alayhi salam has no father. And if in Semitic culture you're known by your father, then where does Isa belong to? So if you notice in other ayat of the Quran, when the Anbiya are speaking to the people, they usually say, Ya qawmi, oh my people. There's a relationship between them, like I'm from you, you're part of me, I'm not a foreigner, I'm not someone from a different tribe or a different nation, I'm from you, okay? But in the case of Isa alayhi salam, in Surah Al-Saf, he says, Ya Bani Israel. He doesn't say, oh my people, he says, oh children of Israel. Okay, some say, well, no, Adam is because he has no father. So he said, Ya Bani Israel, and not Ya Qawmi, which every other prophet would usually say what? Ya Qawmi, oh my people. Khair. But this is the family in general of Maryam radiyallahu anha, first and foremost. You can say it's the family of Isa alayhi salam, but again, since he has no father, but that is the general, the backdrop of this, the reason why this surah is even named Al-Imran, Surah Al-Ali Imran, is because the backdrop or the Asbab al-Nuzul is the fact that the group of Christians from Banu Najran who were Arab Christians came to the Prophet ﷺ and had dialogue and debated with him the nature of the divinity of Isa alayhi salam. Okay? So this basically gives us also an idea that whatever usloob or style of debate that is presented to us in this surah is more than likely the best way of how we should discuss those issues in front of Christians especially. And of course the story of Maryam is mentioned in this very eloquently and very beautifully, of how she was a very special person, no doubt. In fact, she was, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says later on in the surah, she was given preference over all other women in creation. In other words, there were as the Prophet ﷺ said, there were very few women who reached perfection. What some ulama say that means is that prophethood, nubuwwah. Okay, because technically there was no woman who was sent as a prophet. إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ, as the Quran says very, very clearly. that they were all men, those who were sent as prophets. So what would the hadith mean? It would mean that very few women had reached that status except for few, and one of them is who? Fatima, or excuse me, Maryam. Although Fatima is included in that as well, in some versions, and other versions no. That's a different discussion. Okay, but Maryam anha is one of them. So her spirituality, if you will, if there would have been a prophet from amongst women, then she definitely would have been one of them. If you remember in Surah Maryam itself, who was sent to her? Jibreel alayhi salam. Now Jibreel alayhi salam doesn't come to anyone but prophets, correct? Right. So Jibreel came to her, appeared فَتَمَثَّلَهَا. Like she appeared in front of her as a man, basharan sawiya, a very handsome man on top of that. That's why at first she said what? And she sought refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because she didn't know this strange man comes. Right? Very good looking, handsome man comes out of nowhere and says, hey, I'm here I am. He said, who are you? You know, I wanted to let him in. Hey, get away from me. But he was none other than Jibreel alayhi salam. And Jibreel alayhi salam, obviously, as we know, doesn't appear and talk to people unless they are Anbiya alayhi salam. However, there's another exception. Does anyone know what that exception is? No wild guesses even? Well, I'll give you a hint. We call it Hadith Jibreel. It's a very well-known hadith where the Prophet ﷺ was asked by Jibreel questions. Right? Wait, what is Islam? What is Iman? What is Ihsan? What are the signs of the hour? So he appeared in front of who? The Sahaba. Meaning the Sahaba also saw him and heard him. And furthermore, in the end of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, he came to teach you your deen. Meaning that he also now became the mu'allim, or the teacher of whom? The Sahaba.
Yeah.
Understand?
But he didn't talk to the Sahaba.
Directly, no. But they heard and saw him clearly. They heard and saw him clearly. To the point that they can relate the entire hadith. And here too, the Prophet also said very clearly that he came to teach you your deen. So which means that the mu'allim of the Sahaba is also who? Jibreel alayhi salam. Okay? So it did happen to non-prophets, but it's very rare. If it happens to non-prophets, and this is definitely a sign of their rank. Okay? So basically we're saying that Maryam anha is one of those women, as Allah said, that He had chosen her. Wastafaki, she was chosen. Specifically, literally istafa, it's like you look into, let's say, like, you have a whole bunch of options, and out of all those options you say, this one. Okay, this is the one. So basically it was like saying for her, you're the one. You're the one who I'm going to choose to do something very great. And of course that will be what? That will be giving birth to Isa alayhi salam. Okay. Al-Masih ibn Maryam. In fact, that is exactly his title in the Quran, which is the Messiah, son of Maryam. In other words, she's that important that the Quran says that he is the son of this woman. Which is ajib. Because again, in Semitic culture, you're not known by your mother, you're known by whom? Your father. And if an Arab or anyone else is going to brag, they're not going to brag about their mother. Who are they going to brag about? Their father. Oh, my father was this, and my grandfather was that, and they did this, and they did that. Right? They're not going to sit there and brag about their mom. Very rarely does anyone do that anyhow, right? They brag about here, the Quran literally singles her out. As if saying, لَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى, when she was born, and as we know, her mother wanted a boy, a male child. This is all in Surah Al-Imran. Why? Because she wanted that child to take care of the Masjid al-Aqsa. And at that time, in this Judaic law, which is still technically the same except for Reform Jews, right? The synagogue cannot be attended to except for a male. Okay? So she thought to herself, well, it's a girl. Now what do I do? And what did Allah respond? That men are not the same as women. But part of why He said that is that this woman will be able to do more than what you have expected from a male child. And that's why Isa alayhi salam is related in the Quran as a title, Al-Masih ibn Maryam, the Messiah, son of Maryam, because basically she's that special. Okay, so you don't have to. He didn't need a father. Maryam was enough. Okay, and so that's why she's spoken about also. Actually, really, primarily, do we see more mention in this surah of Isa alayhi salam or his family? And it's primarily his mother. Mostly his mother and his immediate relatives. Indication being that these are the people that make the man. Okay? These are the people that make the man. Whatever he was is because he came from this blessed family, and he came from this blessed woman who was unlike any other woman, to the extent that Allah reminded her mother that don't worry, it's not a male child, it's not what you wanted, but this woman will be able to do things that the male child wouldn't be able to do. Okay? Alright, so let us begin. So the beginning of the surah, of course, starts with Alif Lam Mim, which is, as we know from Al-Huruf al-Muqatta'at, which is interesting because there is a discussion which hopefully I had intended to discuss, and we will try, if we have time permitting, which is the Mutashabihat. Okay? Because Alif Lam Mim obviously are letters, or part of the Huruf of the Arabic alphabet. However, they are called Al-Muqatta'at because it is said that no one can truly know their meanings. Now, what we mean by that is not that they don't imply things or they don't have meanings. What we mean by that is no one can know definitively what they mean. Okay, you understand my point? That no one can know for sure that this is what they mean. And why is that related to, in a few ayat, we'll see the Mutashabihat. Mutashabihat are those ayat of the Quran which in essence, okay, a person will never truly be able to understand what they are. So as some ulama say, سَقَطَ طَلَبُهُ, meaning that you literally will get frustrated, so frustrated to the point that you would just give it up. Okay? No matter how hard I try, I'm never going to know the actual meaning of this. I may have ideas, I may have opinions, I may have some guesses even. It could mean this, it could mean that. But the meanings of those things, what the shabihat means is that they are so ambiguous, as it's usually translated, that there's no way I can know for sure. So basically I would just give up. Saqata talabahu, meaning you're no longer required even by Sharia to find out what they mean. Why are they there? That's the big question. So many ulama give different explanations, but Al-Alamat al-Sawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he has said in his opinion that one of the reasons, of course, is because for the Quran to be miraculous, for the i'jaz of the Quran, because i'jaz, literally, even to explain that word, i'jaz, mu'jiza comes from i'jaz. I'jaz literally means, if you look at the Arabic word, ajaza ya'jizu, it means to be incapable of doing something. Okay? Now, if you put that into a transitive verb form, which is i'jaz, you understand that you have transitive and intransitive. To explain that, basically, you have lazim, muta'addi. Transitive is something that doesn't require an object. Okay? Intransitive is a verb that requires an object. So if I say darabtu, I hit. Now, it doesn't make any sense in this, I have an object, correct? What did you hit? It's not a complete sentence, right? So I have to say, darabtuhu, I hit him, for instance, right? Then it makes sense. Oh, okay, you hit that person, whatever. Okay, so ajiza ya'jiz or ajaza ya'jizu will mean that I'm incapable. To make it intransitive, to incapacitate something. Or transitive, sorry, right? Do you understand? Again, ajaza ya'jizu means I myself am incapable. Ajiz. You know, even in Urdu you use the word what? Ajiz, meaning I can't do it. I'm not capable. If you want to make something else, when I'm using the word in English, incapacitate, you understand what I mean. Like you want to do that to something else. You want to make them incapable of something. You want to stop them from something. This is called i'jaz. Literally, it's called i'jaz. I'jaz is the root word of mu'jiza. Usually, mu'jiza we say are miracles, which is true. But what are the miracles? What are the miracles for the purpose of establishing the nabuwah or the claims of a person who says that they are a prophet? And why is that necessary? Because literally, i'jaz, it now makes their people who are arguing with them and denying them, it incapacitates them, meaning they are no longer able to argue. You understand? Once the mu'jiza comes, they have nothing left to say. What are they going to say? You split the sea. Oh, well, you know. Yeah. That's from God, right? That's the point. They're incapacitated. They have no response. Now we say, and it is the truth, that the mu'jiza of the Prophet ﷺ, they're in the thousands, but the greatest one is the Quran. Would the Quran be a mu'jiza if it was all obvious? If it was just so plain and simple that, the Arabs would have said, oh man, that's too simple, it's so easy to understand. I could do that. What is the challenge of the Quran? Fa'tu bi suratin. Bring even one chapter. Now how would that be possible unless Allah would use words? That's why He started off with Alif Lam Mim. Because He's telling the Arabs that you can't do this. I can do this. I can say Alif Lam Mim and it means something, but you'll never know what it means. You understand? It wouldn't be a literary masterpiece even if it was all obvious. Would you be able to say that this poet or this writer was so good because everything they wrote was just so face value and obvious? And there has to be something there that makes you go, right?
So is there some science behind these combinations?
Absolutely. We will get into it. And this is what is discussed in the beginning of the surah. Muhkamat mutashabihat. So there are ways of knowing, obviously, when and where there are things that are mutashabihat. Right? Like when and where is something not so obvious. Because literally that's what mutashabihat literally means. Ambiguous is how we translate it. And to give an example, it's used that way in the Quran. So Bani Israel said to Musa, قَالُوا دُعُوا رَبَّكَ يُبَيِّنٍ لَنَا مَا هِي إِنَّ الْبَقَرَ تَشَابَهَ عَلَيْنَا. Tashabaha, it's the verb that's related. So what did they say? They said, oh Musa, make dua to your Rabb, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Let Him explain to us exactly what kind of cow, because cows, they all look the same to us. And it said tashabaha. Tashabaha alayna, meaning they all look the same. How am I supposed to distinguish which cow that I'm, right? Because they all look the same to me. I don't know which one you're talking about. Okay? The people that will go to Jannah, as another example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that when they get to Jannah, they say, قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي رَزِقَنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ وَأُتُوا بِهِ مُتَشَابِهًا. When they get to Jannah, they'll say, oh, it's very similar to all that we used to get in the dunya. رَزِقَنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ, meaning we used to get these same things in the dunya. Meaning they'll see fruit, and they'll say, oh yeah, we used to have fruit in dunya. Okay? And they'll see trees and rivers, and say, oh, you know what? That too. Meaning they'll look very similar, but they're not the same. Why does Allah do that? Of course, to the people of Jannah, because this is basically the nature of human beings. If you see something that you're not used to, you have no acclimation whatsoever to it, you're not going to be attracted to it. Why does something look ugly? Because it's completely different. I've never seen that before, right? Would you be attracted to it? Say, whoa, what's that? So if Allah Ta'ala created fruit in Jannah and it just looks so, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to eat that, right? You understand? So it has to be somewhat, you have to have some relationship to it. So, oh, you know what? That looks very similar to what I used to get in the dunya. That's fruit. You see what I'm saying? Mutashabihat. So literally mutashabihat comes from the same root word. So it's those things you can't really distinguish them from each other. You get the point? That's why it's called ambiguous, because you don't really have any knowledge to say that this is that. That's what the tashabah alina. Like these cows all look the same. How do I know which cow to how do we know that this is the one? They're all the same. You see what I'm saying? So when you can't distinguish something, this is literally called what? Tashabah. Okay. So that's why they're called mutashabihat, because you have no way of, as I said before, you have no way of really knowing exactly what it is. So you just give it up. That's why Bani Israel said that. They wanted to give it up. So their excuse was what? Cows all look the same. how would I be able to know which one Allah wants me to sacrifice, right? There was an excuse for them to do what? They say, give it up. We won't know exactly which cow. How are we going to know which cow it is? Playing jokes until finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it very specific. SubhanAllah wa bihamdih. So that's the idea of mutashabihat, basically. And the wisdom behind it is part of that. You can't have, and this is a very important point to remember, because there are some Muslims out there who insist that everything in the Quran is literal. But then how is it miraculous in nature then? It can't be miraculous in nature if it's all just literal. If excuse the expression, but every Tom, Dick, and Harry can figure it out. There's no ijaz there. There's no mu'jizah there. Okay? It has to have something of things like majaz, metaphors, similes, right? Things that are, and that's even, again, as I said, great writers and poets, they can't just write in a way that it's so easy for everyone to figure out. They have to get a little complicated, right? To prove that they are what they are, as some of them say, that, was sha'ri, my poems are my poems. That was way of his bragging. Meaning what? My poems are my poems, they speak for themselves. You know how I am. All right, you know what a master I am. All right? So there has to be there has to be a little bit of that. Now, the point is also, when Allah speaks about them, He says that the muhkamat, if you go further again, very few ayat ahead, muhkamat are ummul kitab. Hunna ummul kitab. They are the very essence of the book. Meaning by that the backbone, the essence, the the mother, literally like the very essence of the book is what? Are those things which are clear in meaning. The mutashabihat, in other words, are not the primary and the real essence of the book of Allah. They're there, but they are not the primary and they are not the essence of the book of Allah. Now, based on that, even we have certain rules, which are mutashabihat, are always understood under the auspice or the guidance of the muhkamat. Okay? And that's also, there's a reason why that was said. It's not just, there's of course part of it is for us, but also this is in relation to the Christians that came to the Prophet. Because they would use ambiguous things to try and trick the Muslims around them, as Christians do now as well. They do the same thing. Well, you see, the Quran says that Isa alayhi salam is ruh min. He is literally a spirit from him, from Allah. So see, that's our whole Trinity right there. وَكَلِمَتُهُ أَلْقَاهَا. And he is his word. If you know, again, in this context, historically, these are like what you would call old Byzantine, what they call the Eastern Orthodox Church, right? So Christians have different beliefs according to their denomination, but they believed in the logos, like certain thing, like there's a trinity. They explained it as Isa was the word. Kind of how we say Allah has kalam, or speech, that was Isa alayhi salam, and then he was put into a human flesh and body. So that's how they explain the Trinity. So you see how they try to trick the Muslims with this. Look, the Quran itself says that Isa is a word from God. That's what we say. So what is the response? These are mutashabihat. And mutashabihat can't be understood in any other way except under the guidance of muhkamat, what is very clear in meaning. You see the relationship? Then Allah says about everyone in general that there are certain people that they seek to explain and understand these mutashabihat ta'wil, meaning they want to give a meaning to it. Ta'wil literally means, again, you have a whole bunch of different options what this particular thing could mean. You pick out of all those options a particular meaning. That's literally what ta'wil means. Some people say ta'wil is ambiguous, or like to explain things ambiguously. That's not how at all, or metaphorically. That's not what ta'wil means. Ta'wil means literally, again, you have one word or one ayah. It could mean many things, but out of all of those meanings, you choose one. That's ta'wil. So people who take them with the shabihat, and what do? They look at it and they say, what does this mean? And out of all these meanings, we're going to choose one. And that'll be the meaning that we're going to apply. Understand? But first of all, Allah disparages people who do that out of what? Ibtigha al-fitna. They're just trying to cause problems. Right? Their intention is not really to know what the word of Allah means. but they just want to cause some kind of problems. In the case of Banu Najran, which is what they were trying to trick the Muslims, that always see your Quran also talks about Trinity. Okay? Okay? Now there will be people amongst the Muslims who do the same thing. Try and use these ambiguous things to prove their point. Okay? When we say about the ambiguous things that your ta'wil can't be right. Why? Because they're ambiguous, which means what? That no matter how much you try, you won't be able to really truly know the meaning of these things. So you're not required even to do what? To even bother about it. You're only required to do as the ayah says, Amana kunum min indillah. It's from Allah, we accept it. We're not going any further than that. You see what I'm saying? We're not going any further than that. Okay? Make sense? Alright. So, he starts with that. So the discussion really starts with that. Because Alif Lam Mim is part of that. Here it is. What do you know about Alif Lam Mim? Right. So leave it alone. This is Allah's way of telling you, you really don't know anything. I know, you don't. So leave it at that. But I'll explain it to you anyhow. Allah Ta'ala is so gracious. Right? So he says, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyun qayyum. This is in response to these Christians. The first thing, Allah, with whom there is nobody else worthy of worship, and He is the ever-living, self-subsisting. Why would Allah choose these particular two names? Because it's directly related to how you would break the entire argument of Trinity in the Christians. Al-Hayyul Qayyum. Okay. Some even say that these are or could be potentially one of the two names could be Al-Ism Al-A'zam, or the greatest name of Allah. That also is contentious, right? Nobody knows for sure exactly what is the name of Allah, or the greatest name of Allah. Not the name of Allah, but the greatest name of Allah, Al-Ism Al-A'zam. That which by where if you make dua with, your duas are accepted. But regardless, why are these two attributes mentioned? Alright. Well, number one, Al-Hayy, the ever-living. What do we mean by that? So we're going to have to get a little bit theological and philosophical for a second ourselves, but not too bad. I won't do it too badly. Alright. That Hayy means ever-living. But what we mean by that is that everything else that is described as living, life as a quality, as a sifa, an adjective, when you describe something as living or as having life, is separate from the actual thing that you're describing. It's not essential to it. So you and I could be described as what? Dead, right? Is life separate or essential to us? Separate. Okay? So life is something separated from us. It's not essential to us. Whereas Allah, haya, or this quality, is considered one of those things that we say we must attribute to Allah because it is inseparable from Him. It is essential. It is not a separate thing, which is another philosophical, theological discussion, that the attributes of Allah are not Him, nor are they other than Him. They are not separated from Him. Unlike us, all of these attributes are separate from us completely. They're not essential to us. Okay? Why is that important to the argument? Because when Rasulullah ﷺ was asked about these things, and he asked these Banu Najran, the Christians of Banu Najran, some questions in return, one of the things he said is that, did Isa alayhi salam die? And according to their own version, yes. Right? So Allah is what? Al-Hayyul Ladhi La Yamut. It's the same principle. He is the ever-living who does not die, meaning the attribute of death does not apply to Allah. And the attribute of life is for us what? Totally separate. So how could Isa alayhi salam therefore be God? Number one. Alright? It's the first part. Okay? Al-Qayyum. Al-Qa'imu ala kulli shay la zawala lahu. The one who sustains all things, who takes care of all things, and who will never dissipate or disappear. Right? Self-subsisting, So then the second question to them was what? Was he not born of a mother? And since he was born of a mother, was he not raised by his mother and fed by his mother? And also, yahdathul hadathu, meaning did he also not use the bathroom? Because this is also the argument of the Quran. Kana ya'kulan at-ta'am. Okay, you say that Maryam is the mother of God when yadu billah. I'm just repeating things that are right. And you say that Isa alayhi salam is God himself, but they both ate food. If they both eat food, there's two things. Number one, can he be al-qayyum? Because al-qayyum is the one who subsists by himself and needs nothing else. So if they're eating food, is that the case? And the second thing is that they eat food, yahdathu hadath, meaning they have to use the bathroom. So is this the one you say who's God? You understand? So in the very beginning, Allah Ta'ala basically squashes the whole argument. That what you're saying is absurd. This is muhkam. You see, what we just established is what? You yourselves know and admitted in front of me, Isa died at Isa. Isa was a child and was raised by his mother, and he was fed and given all of these things that normal children do, right? Which means they do what other human beings do too. They relieve themselves and so forth and so on. You admitted all that. So in essence, you yourself know and cannot deny what is muhkam, which is that it cannot be God. He cannot be God. Instead, you want to follow the mutashabihat. Even if you look in their Bible, they'll do the same thing. Well, you have this passage that says, I and the Father are one. Okay, if we're going to go down that road, we have a hadith Qudsi that's in Bukhari and others, where the Prophet ﷺ said that a person ceases not to get closer to Allah to the point that kuntu sam'ahu alladhi yasma'u bihi, and to the end of the hadith, that I become their hearing with which they hear, and their eyes with which they see, and their hands and so forth. So what is that? We have a tradition like that too. If you read the tradition on the outward, what does it appear to be? Then you and God are the same. But do we understand it that way? No. So why are you taking something ambiguous and then trying to go around something that you know is true? Do you understand? One is muhkam. You know it's a fact. He was a man, he was born, he ate food, he passed, he went to the bathroom, he died, even according to your own versions. You know for a fact that's not God. But you want to take something ambiguous, which I and the Father are one. You can't do that. The ambiguous is explained by what? What we know is certain. So there must be another meaning to it, meaning my will and the will of my Father are one. Because I am a messenger of Allah. I do everything that He wants. I say everything that He wants. So in essence, as if we are not one being, but it's like me and Him are in one and the same. Understand? My will is His will. The same thing we'd explain in those hadith. That it's not that that person becomes Allah. Hash Allah. We know that's not possible. But that person, their will, right, and their actions become one with Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Meaning that it coincides and it is in complete conformance to Allah's will and pleasure and so forth and so forth. Does it make sense? But you see what I'm trying to say? This is their way. Our way is to establish what is very clear. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. That is clear. Their way is to argue with that which is what? Mutashabihat. Something which is ambiguous. And they themselves know that these things are facts. So what does it mean? It means that at the end of the day, as it said in this riwayah, that if they're going to continue to argue with you, they're arguing with you inadan, which is out of their stubbornness. They've acknowledged themselves what is true, but they don't want to submit to it. So they're just going to keep on arguing with you. But no, Jesus is God, Jesus is God. I remember, a lot of Christians do that. Sometimes they get emotional. One person told me when we talked about these issues, well, all I know is that Jesus came to me. Very happy that, how would you even know that? Do you know what he looked like? You see what I'm trying to say? Those paintings that you have on your church wall, that's not Isa alayhi salam. So even, you understand my point? If you even wanted to say, well, how did Isa alayhi salam actually look? Where is your description of him? In the entire of the New Testament, I want a description. That's the beautiful thing about this ummah, mashallah. We have to really appreciate what Allah has done for us when He says, "Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." That He sent down this Quran, this dhikr, and He protects it. Protecting it is not just the Quran itself; it's everything else that's related to the Quran, including the Sunnah, including the Prophet ﷺ's description. Meaning, we have detailed, descriptions relayed to us authentically from generation to generation of exactly how the Prophet looked, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? His skin color, his hair, his feet, his chest, even his chest hairs. Who would ever take the time for that? Everything was detailed, all right, to the point where literally you could put a picture in your mind so that if ever the time came that you saw the Prophet ﷺ, you would recognize it. I said, yeah, that's him. This is exactly how he was described. Whereas if you ask them, Jesus came to you, just a simple question like that. You don't have to get too deep. You say just, well, if Jesus came to you, how do you know what he looks like? Well, I saw this Germanic or Anglo, Saxon looking type of guy on my church wall. That's Jesus, right? Is that Isa alayhi salam was German? Right? And now you go to African American churches, they have the black Jesus, right? So Isa alayhi salam was black. You guys make up your mind. Alright? He was this, he was whatever you want. That's what you make him. So in essence, how do you know that what you saw wasn't just a figment of your imagination? Or just shaitan playing with you? Or anything else? Because by the way, when shayateen trick people, there's another aspect to it. I did mention that last time, that the word wahi is used in relation to the shayateen, that yuhun, right? Some of that indicates too that sometimes when the shayateen do these things to people, it can feel to them as strong as wahi. That they may really believe that God is speaking to them. And it may feel authentic to them that I had this epiphany, that's what they call it, Jesus came to me last night and it was just overwhelmingly so intense. And he said, man, I don't care what anyone says. I'm a believer now. You see, that's why we shouldn't be people that get carried away with miracles either. Miracles exist, things happen. The soul is an incredible thing. And they can do incredible things. But we shouldn't get so caught up in it that becomes the very basis of your deen. Okay? If I have these experiences, then it's real. If I don't, then I don't want to believe it. No, sometimes actually Allah doesn't allow us to see those things in order to test us, okay? To keep us on the straight path, not because you see a miracle. Because again, if you asked hard questions, how do you even know that this was from Allah? How do you even know that this had happened because, you know what I'm saying? So you can't base your deen off of miracles. By the way, miraculous things that happen to non-prophets are known out haqq, it's true. But they don't happen because you want them to happen. They usually happen in a time and place where you least expect it. Okay? Not like when you're saying, okay, this is going to happen because I wanted to. So I'm going to wake up tomorrow and there's going to be $1 billion under my pillow. Right? Well, first of all, if Allah allows that to happen, you might be in trouble. And it might not be a good thing, actually. Right? You may not want that to happen. Okay, fair. So then, نَزَلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابِ الْحَقِّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ. So indeed Allah has revealed this book, right, in all truth, meaning that in reality this is a revelation from Allah, that its purpose, musaddiqan here, the reason, like in Arabic it's called mansub, it has a fatha, that the reason why, in other words, one of the reasons that we sent this book to you is to verify all the things that is there with these people. Okay? To verify what came before you. And that's why he says that we also revealed the Torah and the Injil before we brought this Quran min qabl, hudan lin-nas, and these were the sources of guidance for people. And then وَأَنزَلَ الْفُرْقَانِ, meaning it's another separate sentence, if you will, like an apostrophe. And we also reveal this Furqan. Furqan is that which distinguishes between truth and falsehood, which in this case would be the Quran. So then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ. Indeed, those who deny the signs of Allah, for them is a very harsh punishment. Wallahu azizun dhu intiqam. And indeed Allah is Aziz dhu intiqam. Aziz, literally in this case again, questions come up in our minds naturally. Why would Allah punish? Why is Allah so harsh? Sometimes people think like that. Aziz literally means the one who can do whatever they want out of two options. They have two options. They can forgive, they can punish. The one who has absolute authority to do either one. So he's mentioning that first before he says dun intiqam, meaning the one who is vengeful, takes out vengeance on people. To let you know that if he decides to take vengeance on somebody, he also had the option to forgive them. And if he chose not to forgive them and to punish them, well then, that is the prerogative of one who, what? Look at the next quality. The prerogative of one, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. The one who had absolute knowledge of all things, on whom with there is nothing hidden from him in either the heavens and the earth. Do you understand the connection? He has the ability to do whatever he wants. Qudra. He's Aziz. There's two options: forgiveness, punishment. And he's also dhu intiqam, meaning he also takes vengeance out, which is also part of being divine, because if he had to forgive everyone, that is not an absolute being of absolute power. You understand my point? An absolute being with absolute power should be able to do either one that they wish, not just one. If there's only one option, can you say that's absolute? No. They're limited, they're restricted, they can only forgive. So that's not God. God is the one who can do either one. Dhun intiqam, meaning he does at times punish. But if he does, remember that his punishment is not unjust. What you and I may think, that, oh, why would he do that? Because why? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ فِي السَّمَاءِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. That nothing is hidden from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore what? If you decide to punish, that decision is based on absolute and complete knowledge. And when we say that, we mean knowledge of things that could be also not just as simple and minded as we are. If there was a better option, trust me, Allah knew it. Allah knows it. Why does Allah choose in this case that there's nothing? إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَيْهِ شَيْءٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فِي السَّمَاءِ. Why does he choose the heaven and the earth? As Al-Alamat al-Suyuti rahimahullah ta'ala says, that why does Allah choose the heaven and the earth? Because this is the extent of our physical senses and sensory perception of what we know. In other words, trying to tell us that we're dum-dums. You only know what you see, feel, and touch within the earth and the heavens. And yet you want to judge God about who he punishes, as if you know the hidden details of things, whereas nothing is hidden from Allah. And the only extent of your knowledge is what? Again, the earth and the heavens, meaning what you can observe. Can you have the audacity to say that you can make judgments about things that are beyond your observation? Can you? Right, so why have the audacity to start judging Allah? Why would God do this? Why we could die? Don't worry about that. Because هُوَ الَّذِي يُصَوِّرُكُمْ فِي الْأَرْحَامِ كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. Because he is the one who has literally يُصَوِّرُكُمْ. It comes from the name of Allah, Al-Musawwir. And Al-Musawwir, some say in chronological order, is the last stage of creation, meaning, in Surah Al-Hashr, هُوَ اللَّهُ خَالِقُ الْبَارِئُ الْمُصَوِّر. That Musawwir is the last stage of creation. That's why it says fil arham, in the wombs, meaning your physical form, which is the last stage of your creation. It appears and it happens where? In the womb of your mother. So he's the one who gives you this last stage of creation, is that he fashions you and gives you certain physical, right? What do you call it? Whatever. Physical. I can't think of a word here. Attributes. Right, there we go. We'll use that for now, right? Physical attributes. According to whatever he wants. Again, same thing, Mashiach. He had an option of doing what? Well, in the very beginning, he could have made you male or female. Right? In the beginning, everyone's has no gender. So what does Allah do first? He chooses for you all these things. Kayfa yasha. Again, he has the option. Just like forgiveness and punishment, he has the option. Whatever He likes, male, female. And how does He base that option? Upon what? Knowledge. Same thing for the mother of Maryam anha that comes later. She wanted a male. Allah decided differently. He made a decision based on knowledge. That's why whatever Allah gives you, just say what? Alhamdulillah. Male, female, doesn't matter. Allah knows, you don't. You may think you know, but you don't. So whatever He gives you, alhamdulillah. Beautiful baby boy, beautiful baby girl. Even, I dare say, as Allah says, He mixes it up sometimes. Even a beautiful baby, hermaphrodite. Whatever it is, however Allah created it, that was His choice. And His choice is based on knowledge. You just say, MashaAllah, alhamdulillah. Literally, كيف يشاء ما شاء الله. Okay? لا إله إلا هو العزيز الحكيم. Again, using the name Aziz, He has the choice. Al-Hakim. The hukam, meaning the decision of making this to this. Right? Putting this to this. This is the hukam. Taking two things and putting them together. That this belongs to this belongs to that. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakim, meaning He's the one who knows when and where and how things should go down, so to speak. Alright, you see how this all works? It's all related. SubhanAllah, it all somehow relates to it. One thing after the other relates to the other thing. It's not haphazard. Okay? So let's just go over this quickly and then we'll stop. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات. He's the one who brought down أنزل, meaning in piecemeal, if you will. Or some say all at once. Whereas نزل will be in على مكتب, like in stages. So He brought this book down to you. From this book there are ayat that are muhkamat. They are very clear in meaning. No one has any second opinion about them. Hunna ummul kitab, again they are the very mother, if you will, meaning the very essence of this book. وأخر متشابهات, and there are others which are mutashabihat, which we already explained. فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ, as far as those people who have some type of waywardness in their heart. Zayg literally means to go off the path, to go somewhere else, to lean towards something else. So those people who want to go somewhere else with all of this, meaning they don't want to follow the muhkamat. They don't want to follow what's obvious. As we mentioned before, what was obvious is that Isa alayhi salam is not God. But they don't want to do that. They want to do what? They want to go the other way. So what do? فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ. So then they will try to follow all that which is ambiguous. Well, what about this? What about that? It says this, it says that. All of it just trying to create fitna. وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِ. And trying to say that they know what these things mean and this is what it means. But what does Allah say about that? That you know the ta'wil, you know what it means? وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Nobody knows its true meaning except Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. And those people who are deeply embedded in knowledge, they simply say about these things, يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. We accept all of it. Those things which are clear, those things are not so. All of it is from Allah. وَمَا يَذَكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And nobody will take a lesson from these things. No one will remember these things, meaning no one will take a lesson from these things except those who are people of true intelligence, of substance, literally. أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ, of lub. Lub is like the essence of somebody. Okay? So literally, truly intelligent people will have substance and truly use their brains the way they're supposed to be used. That something is clear and something is ambiguous. What does a truly intelligent person do? Clear. I'm not going to do things that are ambiguous because they're ambiguous. I have no way of knowing really. So why even go there? You understand? Why even go there? If you're truly intelligent, you say, why even go there? Because you're just guessing. And your guesses are based on what exactly? See, that's what exactly are you? Right? How exactly are you concluding these decisions of yours? Your ta'wil. You see what I'm saying? They're concluding it as Allah said because they have fi qulubihim zayg. They've already made up their minds of what they want to do, and so their hearts are already in that direction. So whatever's going to justify their zayg, then they're going to do that. Even if it is what? Even if it contradicts all common sense. So unfortunately, most Christians, when you talk to them about the Trinity, They conclude different things. Like I said, some get emotional and they try to pull the whole, Jesus came to me and blah, blah. Other ones will just say, well, it doesn't make any sense. That's the beauty of it. Right? It's supposed to be like illogical.
Could we say it's miraculous?
No, they don't even claim that. They just say it's literally the beauty of it, according to them, is that it makes no sense. That you're supposed to be confused. That's what they call faith. You see the difference? That's why I try to warn people, Iman is not the same as faith. We are required to accept tasdeeq, and you accept something based on its veracity, because you know it's true. Because when it's brought in front of you, you have a reason to say, yes, this is right. You see what I'm saying? Not the opposite. For them, faith means exactly that it makes no sense whatsoever. This even a child can figure out, no offense to anyone. I remember there was an African-American brother in Chicago, the masjid. I used to have a program in a masjid in the west side of Chicago, which is one of the worst neighborhoods of Chicago. In fact, particularly that neighborhood had some of the highest rates of gun violence in the whole city. And Chicago has been pretty bad in the past couple of years, right? So, mashallah, I used to go there and we had a halaqah. And one of the brothers, I used to talk to him after, one of the African-American brothers there said that, even when he was a child and going to church, he once asked his pastor something because he's reading the Bible, and, he heard his pastor saying God knows everything, God is all-knowing. He's like, as we, also this is an attribute we also accept. Inna Allah la yakhfa alayhi shay'un fil ardi wa la fi sama. Yeah, of course. Nothing is hidden from him in heaven and the earth, as the ayah just said, correct? So he was taught that God knows everything. Then all of a sudden he's reading and he's hearing his pastor talk about the story of Adam alayhi salam, that when he did what he did, he's hiding from God, and God says, oh Adam, where are you? So he said, what, pastor, if he knows everything, how did he lose him? How did he not know where he is? It's you see, children are smarter sometimes, and it's a good question. The total contradiction in terms. That's not even what the Shabiah and Muhkamat. That's complete contradiction, which makes no sense. So say, you just have to believe. It doesn't have to make sense to you. For us, it's not that way. Because Muhkamat includes that. It has to be something that's very clear. Okay? That when you hear it, when you think about it, that's why we mentioned these things before. Al-Hayy, Al-Qayyum, one who lives. That's his essential attribute, not something separate from their being. He died. That can't be God. Al-Qayyum, self-subsisting. He had a mother. He ate food. That can't be God. These are very clear and absolute muhkamat conclusions. After that, why go and start chasing around things that make right? Because you're just supposed to believe. So clearness.
Are there any irrational thoughts that are necessary for believing in Islam?
No. I make the argument, and all of that I've made it in the past too, that there's nothing. People should not misunderstand certain things, like quoting Ali anhu was saying that the deen is not based on aql, it's based on following the Prophet ﷺ, because if it was based on aql, you would wipe on the bottom of your. They're not socks. I know I'm going to bring that up later. They're not really. They were moccasins, if you will, leather, socks. They're not socks. Okay, and any hadith that mentions jawraba, which is like a sock other that's made out of non-leather, those are weak also. Okay, that's important because we just established some principles, like something that's muhkam, something that's clear, as the Quran says you should wash your feet. Okay, you can't contradict that unless you have something as strong as it. You see what I'm trying to say? And the reason why the ulama have accepted wiping over these leather moccasins, if you will, khuffayn, is because so many Sahaba mentioned it that we cannot deny it. More than 50. Okay? But that's another issue. The point of what you were saying, right, is that too has to be understood in this context. We're talking about fiqh. He's not talking about iman, what you have to believe in terms of Allah and the malaika and the akhirah. In terms of fiqh, yes, not everything is easily understood by the aql, because it has to do with our actions in terms of them being related to reward and punishment in the akhirah, which the mind alone cannot conclude. He's not talking about in our faith in aqidah. In our faith in aqidah, It has to be logical.
But what about, for example, the concept of eternity, which the human mind can't really grasp, right? That God was forever.
Right.
You can't really conceptualize that. I mean, would you want to use the word irrational?
No, it's not. Absolutely, that also too is very logical.
That someone could live forever?
Absolutely.
That there was no concept of time before time?
Time is relative.
No, but the human mind...
You see what I'm saying?
No, I
Time is relative.
But to say something that God was forever...
Right. Had no beginning and no end. It's completely logical. That's what makes him God. Because everything else in the universe is within time, space, and place.
No, but would you agree that the human mind can...
The human mind can't... No, let's put it this way. The human mind has trouble imagining it, but it can grasp it. Meaning as a concept, it can definitely understand it. This is an abstract concept, right? That it definitely can what? It definitely can understand it to the point that it can say true or false. In terms of imagining it, right? Yeah, there it's difficult because the imagination is limited to only what it knows. That's why Allah, like remember the ayah I just said? هَذَا الَّذِي رَزَقَنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ. These are the things we used to be given before. Why did Allah create the things in Jannah similar to what we experience in this dunya? Because our minds are so feeble, we only have direct experience with things we know. If it was different, we wouldn't understand it. And we say, that's not the same when we say rational or it makes sense. Logic, this is also, man, see, we don't have time. We would have to get into the whole philosophical discussion. Even in the Western world, philosophy has changed. In the old days, in the Greek, philosophy, and even up until the Reformation and, the Age of Enlightenment, there was an idea that the human mind can understand abstract notions definitively. You understand what I'm saying? Things like this, time, space, and place, right? God, things like right and wrong, the human mind, these are all abstract things, right? The human mind in Western tradition too, at one point they said, yeah, the human mind can know these things. It's in the modern world, this is why we have to understand the nature of the beast. It's in the modern times and modern philosophers like Kant and all these people that denied that and said the human mind has no idea what it's doing when it comes to these issues. All we know is empirical. That's why they were called what? The empiricists. Anything that we'd observe directly in front of us, that's all we know. Things beyond that, we can't know. We're saying no. The aql is a deep thing. Someone asked me, we don't have to. Back in Philadelphia, someone said that to me. People talk about being spiritual, but I became Muslim because it was intellectual. I said the intellect is spiritual. Is the intellect something physical or metaphysical? What is it? Right. So you see, your terms even are wrong. وَلَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا. Okay. This is why Ali radiallahu anhu said in a hadith that's hasan at the very least. And Imam Bukhari has related this, that the place of the intellect is the heart. So in other words, we're saying that the intellect's purpose is not just to observe things in front of you. The intellect's purpose is to conclude things that are abstract, that are beyond the physical, beyond what you experience. Take mathematical concepts, we can use that, right? Are all of them experiential? If so, is anyone an engineer here? All right, are there certain things that make sense but cannot be done in real time?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, they make sense. That's what we're trying to say. It's definitely logical, but it cannot be done right now in real time. We have to separate the two. Am I making any sense here, or is it kind of? You understand what I'm saying? This is the problem of our education. Really, is that we're taught now to be completely empirical. So if it doesn't have some substance, if it's not like have a width and height, and it just not, that's illogical. No, zero. Show me zero in real time. Can you show it to me? Where is it? Right? Show me zero in real time. But yet, that's an essential concept for almost all mathematics that we use now. Is it correct or not? Right? If we don't have that, basically everything falls. So the logical part of it, what we mean by that, we have to distinguish between what we mean by logic, okay, and reason. We're talking about the ability of human beings to make definitive conclusions in the abstract. like what we just mentioned, that as the Prophet ﷺ argued with these Christians, if he died, can he be God? See, that's an abstract concept. The answer is no. Why? Because if he died, then what? He does not have the attribute of life. And if he doesn't have the attribute of life, then he cannot be God, because God has to be Al-Hayy. So forth and so on. See, this takes time, right? It takes time, but that's why it says, right? What did they just say? لَا يَذَكَرُوا إِلَّا ulul albab. The only people who truly understand these things and take benefit from these things are people who are what? Ulul albab. That they are truly intelligent. That they really have depth of understanding. They will understand these things and they'll say, yeah, that's it. You see anything? They'll pinpoint and say, okay, yes, that's it. Other people will get confused and say, well, that doesn't make sense to me. Why? Because I've never experienced it. You see what I'm trying to say? So even we can take other sciences like this, like mathematics and different things. And we say, no, there's plenty of things we don't experience, but we know that they are rationally, logically sound and true. And our minds can, what? Conclude and conceive of them and say, yes, that's right. Even though it's not there in real time. Because real time right now is the dunya, right? And that is the aspect, why does Allah call the dunya mata'ul ghurur? A deceptive, short-lived, right, that He gives to us, because that's what it is. In this dunya, when we get so used to it, we begin to think that this is it. And when our minds get caught up only in the dunya, that's what happens. We're no longer able to conceive. That's why Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala said that he said this, may be harsh for some, but he said that Christians are some of the dumbest people. Because why? Their minds cannot go beyond what is absolutely physical. That's why they have to make God what? A man, a human being. Even if you look at their philosophers, even this atheist, I saw them arguing with this guy, Muhammad Hijab, who I'm not saying that you should take everything he says, but in England, and he said, well, if there is a God, God has to exist in the material world. Whoa, so he has to be another material being? Which again, logically, that means he's not God, he's created, right? But their minds are so small in that regard that they think that if it has to be material, it has to be part of the material world. We see no way. There is nothing like Allah. Okay, so any other questions before we wrap up? I hope that wasn't like yeah, it's deep, but alhamdulillah, may Allah make it easy. We should get deep. I think, honestly, we should start making the ummah get deep. That's part of our, make them deep, inshallah, no problem. Let them think about these things. It's the whole purpose. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَذَكَّرُونَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. This is what Allah says. So perhaps you would think, perhaps you would think, perhaps you would think. Inshallah, this surah is very excellent, I think. I mean, all of them are excellent, but mashallah, this is to us, very pertinent, because we're living in a majority, or let's say half Christian society. At least they claim to be from a Judaic. Now, that's a very interesting political, the Judaic Christian.
I guess it's not, it doesn't make sense. It's easier to argue with somebody, not argue, but have a discussion with somebody who's a Christian versus an atheist, or it's probably equally difficult, because if they're not going to accept that there's this, I don't know, I guess it doesn't.
Right? Because it's not all, it's logical when you start studying, but when they hear cultural tropes and they hear things that, I heard this and I was told this, right? And people don't have sources and backgrounds and they don't tell them the real information. And we're still learning. It's a lifetime of us learning and we're not even going to get to half of it. So how do we handle it? A lot of us have you, we're working with you. So when they have those questions, in my little experience with a few kids I try to find the answer and help them for my own children. But when we know those things exist, and we know there's a number of our population, our age group, who have those same questions, because they see behavior or they learn things from culture that was wrong, and it just puts them away from the deen, right? But then we're fighting that left and right when we're trying to keep on a straight path.
Well, the key is, you just said it. And this is why I focus on adult education more than anything. Because that's the key, education, ta'aleem. That's why I said like, it may be deep, but we need to do that. We need to get deep. We don't have the luxury anymore of just assuming that, again, long discussion, I'll try and make quick. We can't have the luxury anymore of assuming that people will just be good, have iman, right, based on what? You see, the only time that you can leave iman in a fitrah state is if they grow up in an environment where, eventually their experiences will nurture it. But even then, it can still be dangerous if they're not learning. That's why the ulama had discussion about this too. Every Muslim must learn their aqidah based on rational evidence, because they need to be convinced themselves. Why? Because sometimes the danger of leaving the iman on fitrah, if Allah strengthens that iman himself, there's no question that mashallah, that person doesn't really need to dig into deep proofs about God's existence and this and that. But if that's not there, okay, the danger is what? You can take a person out of that so-called nurturing environment of iman, and then what will happen? They'll start asking questions, and they'll start getting doubts, and maybe even, like I've seen these Pathan guys, like in their villages back in Pakistan, they pray 5 times a day in Jama'at. They come to America and they're working casinos in Atlantic City. You know what I'm saying? Not praying a single salah. Why? Because that wasn't iman nurtured on some kind of it was just, I'm there, I'm doing it. Okay, so there you're very pious, but once we take you out of there, you're going to lose all of it. That's not what we want. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. We need people who understand these things at a much deeper, profound level. The only way to do that is to educate. The only way to do that is to educate. There's no other way around it, really. And that takes time, it takes some effort, and obviously it's not always easy. But it's necessary, especially in our contexts. Because the biggest issue is this. I mean, some people, I go to some places and I see people, they're very, adamant about, mashallah, they're so perfect from the outward. Even here in America, the guys are praying at nafil rakat after Maghrib Salah before they eat their food, and which is all good. I'm not against that. But the point I'm making is this, is that in our context, I'm more worried about people leaving Islam, which they are, because we haven't actually taught them in this way. So where they understand that yes, this is true. It's not just a matter of my baba and mama telling me this is what good Muslims do, right? And this is how a good Muslim is supposed to be. It's not going to work anymore. He's got serious challenges. So definitely it's all about ta'aleem. Now you may say ta'aleem is not enough, we need to become better people. Yeah, there's other aspects, but that's the beginning. Because without iman, who cares? If I leave Islam completely, wa'iyadhu billah, right? And then after that, who really cares at that point in time whether you're the Junaid Baghdadi of your age, rahimahullah, or not, whether you're praying 100 rakat or fasting every day? It doesn't matter at this point in time because iman is gone. I'd rather have someone who has iman and does very little, right? But at least they know, right, what they have. They're literally, as the Prophet said, raditu billahi rabba wa bil Islam, meaning you yourself are completely satisfied that you are Muslim and that Islam is your religion and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is your prophet. How would you get that? Is that emotional? For some people it is, but that's the whole point. If it's just emotional, that's very weak. It's very weak. In fact, you have to ask yourself the question, that just means if I was born in a Christian family, then I'd be a fanatical Christian. You see what I'm trying to say? It would be no different. You know what I mean? It would just be the same thing. You have to ask yourself, no, you want to be convinced to the point that what? No, this I'm satisfied with. To the point that I wouldn't think of going anywhere else. You see what I'm trying to say? My ta'aleem, education, absolutely 100%. 100%. Continuous, organized, and mashallah, trying to get across to the general community, inshallah ta'ala, hopefully. Jazakumullahu khairan kathira. Last 10 nights, please make dua. For me and the whole
We'll pray Zuhur, inshallah.
Yes, inshallah.